Well, a few days ago, news broke that the Living Computers Museum and Labs in Seattle is going to be shutting down. It was originally funded and opened by Paul Allen, who was a Microsoft executive, but the museum has been closed since the start of the pandemic, and well, now it's closing its doors for good. All items in its collection are going to be auctioned off or otherwise sold. The collection includes, among many other things, multiple deck PDP machines, including a PDP 8, a PDP 10, a Xerox Alto, and many other relics dating to the start of the computing revolution of the 1970s and 80s. However, what I'm most concerned about is the loss of documents, source code, and more relating to computer history that the Living Computer Museum might have had in its collections and what happens to them now. While these might seem secondary to the loss of hardware, these types of documents are often critical in creating emulators or otherwise recreating lost components, and it's a topic that I haven't seen anyone bring up until now. One might ask why, though, if you have the original hardware, why would you need to worry about emulation? It's because emulation is sometimes the only way large pieces of digital history can be preserved or even experienced. For those familiar with Unix history, you might have heard of Multics. Multics was a mainframe operating system running on semi-custom hardware whose design heavily influenced Unix and computing in general. Up until a few years ago, though, the only place you could learn about Multics was in a book. That was it. It was gone. Multics had become a footnote in history. That is until Bull published the full source code to the base system in 2006. Harry Reid and Charles Anthony, using this and other bits of technical documentation that have survived to the present day, were able to create a system emulator built around SimH that is capable of running the system in 2014. A pretty impressive achievement, right? Well, the creation of the emulator caused other people to pick up the torch and start implementing bug fixes and new features in the system. This has led to the release of MR 12.8 in 2023, which not only fixes bugs in the original, but also adds new features. In effect, Multics is now an operating system developed for emulators, since even if real hardware still existed, it might not ever be functional again. This isn't a new problem. Bob Spudnik, a former DEC engineer and vice president, recognized the problem of early 60s mini computers fading into obscurity. This led to the creation of MMIC, an emulator for those mini computers. MMIC in turn became the basis of SimH today, a project that has emulated not just early DEC hardware, but a large range of machines. I also recently covered the story of the Cray 1 emulator in my 5 OS's rapid fire video. Like Multics, no functioning Cray 1 hardware is known to exist. Unfortunately, unlike Multics, the necessary development tools and source code that would be needed to take the platform further have yet to surface and are unfortunately likely lost to time. More personally, I've recently been doing work to see if it's possible to revive the OpenBSD port of DEC's VAX architecture. While I have access to real hardware, most of this work's been done on SimH. SimH isn't perfect, nothing ever is, but it's the only way most people will ever have a chance to experience systems like a PDP-1, which only 53 units were ever made. The same is true of my OpenBSD VAX port, should I succeed in reviving it. Emulators allow systems like this to still exist, but in my experience, there's a general stigma to them in a lot of vintage computing circles, and especially on YouTube. Now, I'll be first to admit that an emulator doesn't necessarily allow you to experience the system as is. It's largely the difference between playing a ROM in MAME and playing the original arcade machine. Furthermore, like many of the arcade and gaming cabinets that MAME emulates, for the vast majority of computer systems, the only way current and future generations will experience these pieces of history is through emulation. Emulation, in turn, is largely made possible due to the technical documents and system source code that all too often gets lost in the shuffle. This is also why I'm extremely concerned for the Living Computer Museum's digital archives. It's here where we get to the heart of the problem. As copyright law exists today, there will never be a safe and secure home for things like obsolete source code or internal technical documentation to be republished. While the Internet Archive and other organizations do accept donations and have vast collections, as we've seen with recent court cases, these depositories are increasingly threatened with broader and broader applications of copyright. Just this week, the Internet Archive lost a lawsuit that resulted in the removal of 500,000 books from its archive. This, when combined with the Living Computer Museum shutdown, has something been a 1-2 punch of bad news. While I won't comment on the specifics of the Internet Archive lawsuit in this video, it's entirely possible as a result of losing this case or a future one, the Internet Archive could easily receive a massive punitive fine, which could bankrupt the organization. Even if the Internet Archive prevails with its current legal appeal, the rising costs of such a legal defense is not to be underestimated. However, unlike the Library of Alexandria, which at least went out with a funeral pyre, the end of the Internet Archive would be an off switch, followed by silence. They would simply stop existing as a byproduct of current copyright laws, both here and abroad. It would be a loss for humanity as a collective whole. It also doesn't help that most computing museums, as far as I can tell, are privately funded. And as we just saw, the Living Computing Museum could not survive without Paul Allen himself. Digital history shouldn't be dependent on one man to shoulder the burden alone. So instead of my usual sign off, I'm going to list a few things that you, the viewer, can do to help. First off, I'm pretty sure the Internet Archive could use a donation right now. I've enabled the fundraiser feature for this video. The box should be in the corner of your screen right now. This is YouTube's giving feature and handles all aspects of the donation. I don't see or touch any of the money. You can also donate on the Internet Archive's website directly. This, though, is more of a band-aid than an actual solution. I would ask those watching, at least those in the United States, to consider writing your elected officials, both state and federal, so broader exceptions to copyright for the purposes of preservation could be written into law. General funding for preservation activities would also go a long way. It might seem like an impossible long shot, but I point to Louis Rosman's work on getting right to repair bills in front of state legislators as an example that we can do better. Said repairability would also be a godsend years from now when modern devices are now antique. I really don't envy the YouTuber 20 years from now who is trying to get a first-generation Apple Silicon MacBook Pro going again. While copyright is a federal law, state-level actions could easily provide additional funding for museums and eventually provide the groundwork for such a change at the federal level. Similar things have happened across history a multitude of times. Just look up the story of how the 27th Amendment was passed for just one such example. As with all things, change has to start somewhere. I know that from firsthand experience. Until next time, this is your host and commander signing out and hoping for a better tomorrow.